Thank you for joining. My name is Peter Greyvensteyn. I'm lecturing at the Department of Architecture and Industrial Design at Tshwane University of Technology in Pretoria, South Africa. I will be presenting the architecture student as cyberflâneur, compositional, social, and technological modalities in representing the urban experience. I would like to introduce you to my students and my research at the architecture school. I'm interested in the concept of time and how a universal synchrony makes the world and our experience of it similar in any particular slice of time. In 2021, architectural representation looks different from what it did 10 years ago or in the time of the previous generation. The role of computers and how augmented reality influences our experience of the city are main contributing factors. The project is premised on the idea that today there are complex interactions of people, place, and data that is mediated by a machine. The machine in this scenario is the smartphone and how it has the capacity to generate, analyze, and distribute data. While the focus of the project is the analysis of visual material produced by the device to highlight this universal synchrony, it could be argued that these methods of capturing data on buildings and cities reflect the way these students conceptualize architecture and live in cities. The essence of the visual material gathered can be summed up by this collection of words: concurrent, contemporariness, genius seculi, nounness, parallel, sameness, similarity, spirit of the time, synchrony, universal, and zeitgeist. I want to show that there are similar creative outputs in any given moment in time, and the data I will use to illustrate this are architectural representations, that is, manipulated photographs and short films of buildings built at very particular times. Dates. A distinction is made between continuous time that happens in chronological order and two isolated moments in history seen through contemporary eyes, which are explored here. We will look at 100-year-old buildings and 50-year-old buildings. Places. In the 2017 Domus publication, Gauteng is listed as the second largest metropolitan area in Africa, with a population of 13.4 million people. Note that Gauteng is historically made up of Johannesburg, Pretoria, and surrounding townships as originally planned by the apartheid government. Because of their proximity and dissolved borders, it is seen as one urbanity. The site of investigation is the central business district of Johannesburg and Pretoria. For comparison, the typology of a compact, vertically stacked structure was selected as representing a universal contemporary inner city architecture. The student could choose one building each as the artifact under scrutiny from a curated list, either built around 1920 or 1970. These are all public buildings with either a commercial or residential function and constitutional or corporate owner. Some are still in use, some are abandoned, and one was imploded just after the student's recording. The people. The premise of this design theory assignment was that students were assigned the role of the cyberflâneur. The significance of the flaneur as an appropriate title for the observer of the urban environment was borrowed from the award-winning magazine called Flaneur. The magazine has explored global microcosms, including urban settings in Berlin, Rome, Athens, Moscow, Taipei, and Sao Paulo. Described by the editors, Flaneur presents one street per issue, the magazine embraces the street's complexity, its layers, and its fragmented nature. A cyberflâneur becomes the updated version, someone strolling but simultaneously scrolling, connected with the virtual world of the internet via their smartphone. The viewpoint of the cyberflâneur becomes the lens through which time and architecture's relationship is revealed. The point of view from behind the lens comes from a certain social realm that will render its reading accordingly. The student profiles of the 1919 and 20 groups revealed that 82% of the students were born between 1994 and 1997, called millennials. 1/3 is female, and only 16% had a rural upbringing. The rest urban, and in a few cases both. 9 cultural groups were identified with this group, if classified according to language: Afrikaans, English, isiZulu, Northern Sotho, Southern Sotho, Sepedi, Tswana, Yoruba, and Xhosa. Teaching in the exit level Bachelor Architectural Design studio, the norm is using the city centre as laboratory and site for design projects due to its proximity and relevance. Adaptive reuse projects are the most appropriate interventions in this context. Photographing and documenting the context precede each project, and often the medium of video are used. During 1919 and 20, 34 buildings were documented. Around 60 students generated a maximum of 9 A3 images and a 4-minute film each. The manipulated images were interpreted and archived according to the following to trace similarities: color palette, concept or special feature, the format of the frame, mirror, radial mirror, highlighter pen, ghost image or fade, collage, animate, repetition, recolor that's strong, a Google satellite image is included, and signs like McDonald's. The requirement for the short film was that the space of the street and the building becomes the main actor, a photograph in time. The short films were classified and archived according to the following to trace similarities: the movie description, sound, color, frame, and the camera work and the editing. Current state of the art. Holzmann, in an article called Similarity, traced the concept of zeitgeist in architecture originating in German Romanticism and was propagated by such philosophers as Friedrich Hegel. Holzmann suspected that zeitgeist should be listed as a possible origin for the search for originality, the widespread view that every age had and even demanded an architectural style of its own, and thus making it the architect's moral duty to be contemporary. Thus, by clinging to older ideas, you are resisting progress, and advancements in technology is about progress and about being contemporary. Historically, sameness was either promoted. To architects in antiquity and into the Renaissance, classicism was a kind of construction kit full of replicable scaled components such as the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian column. Or it was contested, like the tubular steel chairs of the Bauhaus. The historian Bunham used the word zeitgeist in the context of copying or plagiarizing, of who conceived that particular tubular steel chair first. He wrote, "The proliferation of such integrated designs for steel tube chairs was so rapid and universal that it soon appeared almost an anonymous, automatic creation of the zeitgeist, like Choicy's flying buttress." It is argued that the spirit of the time is dictated by technology. New technologies change our perception of things and of time. Television was the first technology that changed the film viewer's relationship with film, and by extension, space-time, only seen from a cinema seat before. Television puts us in the so-called eternal present. I'm quoting D. Schonfield, first president of CNN, talking about live broadcast. You want to lock everyone in the world in the belief that the next minute, the world's greatest catastrophe, the world's greatest joy may occur. And if they leave CNN, they will have lost that one great moment in their lives that people will talk about forever. Soon, the video cassette recorder demolished the aura of the television's mode of absolute presence. The VCR introduced the potential to time shift, to view what you want, when you want, and to fast forward or rewind to any section. This has affected our concept of history and access to the past. The next technology, the TV remote control, made the manipulation now possible from the couch. You now have a choice to instantaneously change channels, switch between live and tape programs, never before from your seat. Architect Norman Foster admits that the science fiction of his youth is the reality of today. He is still certain that if he told his 16-year-old self that he would be able to communicate, type, find any book or movie, watch the news, photograph, process, and store the photo on a device that you can hold in the palm of your hand, he would have thought it's a crazy idea. What will follow now are some of the visuals produced by the students in 1990 and 2020. Even though it is in the South African context, the objective is to trace universality. To interpret the students' visual data, Rose's work, who studies visual culture, will be referenced. He uses technological, social, and compositional modalities. The technological observations. From the statistics gathered, technology has become a large part of the cyberflaneur's daily ritual at 4.5 hours average. The device of choice is the smartphone. The subject matter of the colorful photographs are mostly gray, muted architecture, of which 85% of the buildings are still in use, but in serious need for renovation. Included are the brutalist towers of Schubert Park in a ruined state, stripped so that only the concrete skeleton is left, yet seen through the student eyes, washed in candy colors. The high resolution of the smart devices becomes a reflection of the augmented way we view the world today. Photographer Wolfgang Tillmans noted that the attention to detail in a digital picture that he calls an inhuman sharpness does not correspond anymore with our everyday seeing experience. The social observations. Social media, not new to the millennials, but definitely for an older generation, reveals the popular social trends through the services these applications offer. Instagram is right now the most popular way to connect socially, replacing Facebook. Communicating through curated visual information is the norm. These are visual galleries. The text is secondary, if not omittable completely. The compositional observations. The representations produced by the smartphones are layered. The base layer is the aged building as an original. To call it an original just means the initial shot without any post-manipulation. Yet it becomes hard to pinpoint the original because of all the settings available pre-shooting. Next, most images are deconstructed. They become collages of parts, often in perfect radial symmetry. For the photographs, the buildings were studied mostly just as objects, the plane of the street elevation becoming the edge of the exterior room of the urban space. The architecture was explored through different scales. Similar aspects of the urban buildings were highlighted: massing and composition, the ground plane and entry points, footprint and structural system. The study of the facade treatment included our technology, pattern, proportion, and materials we used, and often featured sound control systems. Even though the brief asked the students to use applications on their smartphones to render it more subjectively, the strong presence of these applications was not anticipated, and not as an exception, but as a rule. When comparing the photographs, the individual portfolios contain variety in almost all of the shots, but when viewed in the context of the other participants' work, there are few shots that does not fall into one of the types used by the others. The photo editor on the smartphone allows everyone to rotate, crop, filter, splash, blur, or adjust. Take the crop function, for example. The square frame is the obvious choice, made popular by the layout of the Instagram gallery. The grid of 3 horizontal images repeated infinitely vertically. You view imagery top to bottom, a departure from the way Western books are paged from left to right. The pattern produced by the rows is an elevated checkerboard. This allows you to make associations from top to bottom or left to right, or even diagonally. If you refer to a traditional storyboard or film script, it is only left to right. It could be argued that the checkerboard layout highlights similarity. The medium of film allowed for more conceptual work that allowed for a less generic outcome. The camera work put the subject behind the camera, and it became about the experience of the student through dynamic shots. Similarities were found here in the use of less color. The majority opted for black and white. Everyone showcased editing skills, which affirms the seamless way the editing programs allow. This editing process was done on the laptop or PC rather than the smartphone. Most of them opted to frame the footage in a filmic horizontal direction. The medium of film, like Netflix and streaming from home, has transformed and changed what and how we receive content, but the format is still landscape. The short films prove the mastering of the electronic device and may point to their familiarity with the fragmented nature of the experience of contemporary life. To conclude, it is about the importance of the flaneur in discovering and rediscovering their city and turning the city into an endless learning environment. The cyberflâneur now has a personal toolkit in the palm of their hand. Their smartphone is their recording, analytical, and sharing tool. Please visit flaneur-ruin.com. Thank you.